So good morning, everyone. We are Lean-YEG. We're a dedicated committee of volunteers responsible for organizing the Edmonton Lean Community of Practice. We are just one of many communities across Canada that are aligned with the Lean Design and Construction Canada. We host a Lean Coffee session on the third Friday of every month from September through June, and these sessions provide a very unique platform where passionate Lean practitioners like yourself can engage in insightful discussions, expand your knowledge, and explore the practical applications of Lean methodologies. So our presenter today, so we're going to be doing a presentation, and she has over 25 years of diverse experience across multiple sectors and has become a trailblazer in Lean practices and integrated project delivery here in Canada. Beginning in industrial engineering with Procter & Gamble, she honed her skills in strategic and tactical Lean implementations. More recently, she has focused on Lean construction project delivery, coaching teams on IPD, and other collaborative methods that drive project success. As a passionate advocate for transforming the built industry, she plays an active role on the board of directors for the Integrated Project Delivery Alliance, IPDA, and serves as the founding chair of Lean Design and Construction Canada, LDCC. Please join me in welcoming the National Director of Lean Practice and IPD Advisory Services at Colliers Project Leaders, Carla Ciepliski. I think I said your, sorry.
All good, you did great.
Same time to your last name, my bad.
It's all good. It's Ciepliski, like sipping a beverage. So there you go. Thank you very much for the introduction, and happy to be here with any of our functioning Lean community practices across the country, especially Edmonton to the north of our Calgary area where I happen to live. I'm going to share my screen, and I'm really eager to chat out some thoughts today, as I have a bit of a journey that I've been on, and when Brian called me about presenting to this group here, I was realizing that there's been many different presentations I've given about what is Lean and what does it mean in this industry, and I was trying to figure out how to explain what someone asked me about this week, which is, Carla, why are you so passionate about this stuff? Like, what makes you get up in the morning with energy and wave your hands around and talk about these kinds of things? So that's where I chose to center my story around, is kind of what makes me passionate about what I'm working on today, and tell a little bit of the journey. And as Val mentioned, I'm with Colliers Project Leaders now. And so I wanted to be able to, I'm in the unique have the unique opportunity right now to have conversations with lots of different owners. And so I've been able to gain for myself a different level and layer of understanding that I wanted to share, because I think it's part of the journey that we're all on in various ways as we evolve how to build better in this industry. So as part of this, I'm going to go along, share a story. I'm going to start with my roots here as I'm showing on the screen. And if there are any like burning questions that someone really wants to ask, if you want to put it in the chat, and I will ask Avel and Brian to I'll pause at a couple points and junctions just to say, hey, are there any questions right now? Otherwise, we can have more questions and answers towards the end and engage in a little bit of community practice conversation. So as Avel mentioned, I'm an industrial engineer, as it's called. My degree is actually mechanical, but I realized I wanted nothing to do with being a mechanical engineer. I got really bored on some of my summer jobs in oil and gas and some water environmental support work. And Procter & Gamble happened to come along to University of Saskatchewan, which is where I'm from, and hire the year that I was graduating for the first time. They were coming there. So I ended up accepting that as something that was seemed way more interesting. And I found that I had a real passion for what industrial engineering is. So that's actually my professional designation is industrial engineering, which is really about the system of how people and process and technology and all of that comes together to architects together, if you will, to do work that has a productive result. So I first hired into the Hamilton plant right between the smelly Delco and Dofasco, if anyone knows that area. That's the picture that you're seeing there. It was an ivory bar soap plant, which meant it also smelled like the some of the byproducts of animals. That was not necessarily pleasant all the time, and you came home kind of smelling interesting. So that's where I started as a process engineer, and quickly got into understanding some different things around how the world works there in Procter and Gamble and within this product supply company group, which had a multitude of products. And what P&G was really good at is making sure everybody was trained at what we're doing and why we're doing what we're doing. So my first training was very intensive. They used to say they would brainwash us or proctorize us. And it was really about understanding that we are playing in multiple markets. So whether it's Crest toothpaste or Tide or Ivory Bar soap, as I started in, or Folgers coffee, which they owned food and beverage at a certain point that I transitioned into, whatever it is, there's a market condition we're trying to understand, and we're really trying to understand the client for that market. And there's a target selling price, and that target selling price has to give us a certain profit margin. Back all that up, and we need to be able to deliver on everything that we're doing all the time. All the bricks and mortar, all of the everything we've got has to be able to be paid for through that allowable cost that sets up for that target selling price. And so we learned right at day one that the target cost we're after has to translate very deeply into the work that we're doing. And we need to be able to design our organizational systems, design our product lines, design everything to align. It wasn't until years later that I learned that that's really target costing and the foundational pieces of target value delivery, as we talk about in our industry now. But that's a lot of my grounding roots. It comes at the time there was a lot of Toyota and Toyota Way and Toyota Production System and lean manufacturing stuff going on in the world, and that was in 1996. I'll share my age. And so it was all integrated work systems is the proctorized version of that in really building in what's high performance work teams and leaders eat last. And the kinds of exposure I had to tools was around a lot of continuous improvement, Kepner-Trago problem solving, Six Sigma. They had an internal master black belt program that I was all in on, ISO programmatic kind of approaches to everything on quality, and very customer centric again, starts with the customer and works backward. Very matrix model. So lots of interesting things there. That's where I grew up, as I say. Typically bounced around the North America because the Hamilton plant was shut down 3 years after I started. And so I started kind of moving around some different business units in the States and spent some time in Texas and some other places. What I really learned from that was about how integration really can occur. And technology was really coming onto the stage then. My first cell phone I got from Procter & Gamble. So there you go. That shows, again, my age. Sometime along the way, my husband and I decided we wanted to come back to be with family, and we both have Saskatchewan families and farming roots and all that kind of good stuff. And so I ended up, after a short stint working for some other organizations, falling, backwards into what I now refer to myself as a lean coach. And someone said, the stuff that you're doing sounds very much like lean. And I actually said, what is that? Like, I had no idea what it was. I might have grown up in an environment that had all that stuff embedded, but I had never heard the word before. And even though the word was created back, prior to me graduating from university. And so I got involved with a group of consultants and started doing work in this space. And what I really started to understand was that there is a whole lot to unpack beyond lean manufacturing that is really around how do we think about what was happening at Toyota at the time that the name lean was given. Because it is a name. It's not the lean English word connotation. It's about a pronoun that represents a bunch of things that were going on. So I started really understanding the system of, over time, there's this continuous improvement, plan, do, check, adjust on multiple levels and layers that's going on to improve the quality of the product or project or whatever service you're delivering. And so I started learning and understanding that this lean thing and the roots for Toyota Production System that I grew up in actually came from Deming. And Deming's management program of 14 Steps of Quality Management was really at the roots of it all. So I started really understanding that. Also started understanding that the Toyota way versus lean manufacturing as it was being deployed in other places in the globe. Toyota Way was really about the organization taking shape to have a very focused purpose and be able to build up process alongside the capability of the people with some foundational thinking. And so that's sort of the Lean Enterprise Institute was created by the folks that came up with the term lean, representing everything at Toyota. So I really started understanding that. Um, that really deepened my view, and as an independent coach and consultant at the time, and my company name was Turning Results. I with other consultants, part of the Winslow Group network at the time that no longer exists as everybody is disseminated and disbanded into other things. We had lots of different work activity going on, specifically in this lean enterprise and operational excellence workspace. And so a handful of them are on the page there, working with some partners as well, like Go Productivity and BDO and PricewaterhouseCooper. We were working with these different organizations, and or I was working independently to help with how do we interpret this lean thinking into practice. And so that really got me going from manufacturing into a broader application of, okay, here's how this works. And some of my favorite stories actually aren't even on the page here because I just had a handful that I left on here from another presentation. But one of my favorite stories is from Big Brothers, Big Sisters, that my mentor, Gary Loblich, who's the lead of the Winslow Group, was heading up. And Big Brothers Big Sisters, they have a wonderful matching process of bigs that are coaching littles. And they were, at the time that they were reaching out for help through some different organizations, not for profits, were really starting to draw on some of these efficiency methodologies. At the time that they reached out for help, and my mentor was getting pulled in and we were getting pulled in, they were really struggling as they weren't having enough volunteers to meet the needs of the community. They weren't getting enough money to try to support what was going on. And the lead times of the volunteers they had from the time that there was a match, a need identified to the time there was a match and they could continue their lovely relationship was very, very long. It was about 20 weeks. Which, if you think about 20 weeks, if you're volunteering or someone's waiting for mentorship, that's a long time. And so, what I really learned through that experience is that one process was taken. And sorry, I'm not sure if my screen's still showing here. Just need to check that. What I realized as we were doing our work with that group was that
you turned it off, Carla. It was
I
showing
didn't.
before.
Yeah, sorry about that. I didn't mean to be very honest. That was something my computer did.
Yeah, those
Apologies.
computers, it's the AI, right? They take control of our lives and they screw us up. They find different ways to trip you up.
There you go. Okay, how's that?
We're seeing your desktop.
Seeing my desktop. That's not good. I really swear I didn't do anything. Okay, how about that?
Oh, there we go. Looking good.
Perfect. Sorry about that, folks. So again, I was talking about my favorite story with Big Brothers Big Sisters. The one process we took was from the time that the volunteer called in and said, I want to be a big, to the time the match was identified. That 20 weeks, we were focusing on how do we reduce that time. And I'll never forget all of the individuals involved. There were 15 touch points that were involved in that process. And everybody had a very strong reason for why they had to do the work the way they had to do it, to be efficient for themselves. And we focused on the value that was being delivered in that process, which was in decreasing the amount of time for that match. The match had to have proper governmental checks at that time, had to have good matching of interests, as we wanted a really good service-based product where there was a great relationship opportunity. And we looked at what could we do to reduce the waste and create a smoother flow of work. So we actually applied a lot of lean tools. There was no technology involved at the time. It was all file folders. We went through a number of different ways that we could organize work with the individuals involved. 20 weeks was taken down to 8 weeks, was sustained and even reduced lower than that with the governmental check. That organization was able to triple their number of matches and had a very strong success story through about a year later. And people were tripping over themselves to give money into a success story. So that not-for-profit went on to have other great amalgamations with other other not-for-profit kind of delivery. So that's the kind of stuff that we were learning at that time. Alongside that, there were organizations like Alberta Energy Regulators figuring out how to do lean when we have oil companies as customers trying to get permits done fast. We have a whole bunch of First Nations saying we don't want anything going on our land and we need to have responsible development going on. And we also had governmental regulatory processes trying to juggle all that. We also had a whole range of things at microbreweries with Olds College. How can we have lean influencing how we teach people how to more smartly design their microbreweries, which was all the rage at that time. I really got an appreciation for my flavors of beer that year. And Sate, who said, let's build a lean management certificate program for our continuing education. But folks, what we want to be able to do is have a Lean Six Sigma black belt who's a CFO of a very large bank, be able to be in the same room as a mechanic from the oil rigs from a very large oil company, sit in the same room as an entrepreneur with a small company alongside a nurse who's working for Alberta Health Services. And everybody needs to be able to connect with Lean. So there's your challenge. Go figure it out. And so we built a course to try to help with breaking that down. So I'm sharing that because this group, and there are many consultants in various corners of our world who have had to digest this thing called lean. As I really explored what it meant, through these different avenues, the historical context becomes actually really, really important. Again, connecting the dots between, it's not just lean manufacturing. It's that, are we looking at it from that manufacturing lens or the true Toyota way, which is that business lens? And it really helped me understand the constancy of purpose and the quality of it all, which is Deming's influence on Toyota, and how the philosophy connects with the business system, connects with process and people. So again, those are just some of the roots that are where I have come from in the journey that I wanted to be able to share. And as things went along, around 2012, I got this kind of some requests from the construction industry, and at the time, Dave Smith was leading Calgary Construction Association, and Debbie Hicks was helping and building out different education programs, and one of the things they were working on was on technology adoption, actually, and process optimization. So I got kind of dipped in there and started meeting with a few different folks from the construction industry. And that started evolving. And so at one point, fast forwarding a year or two, I found myself working with multiple owners at the same time as I think I had 3 or 4 different general contractors at one time, 2 architects, 1 engineering firm, 2 trades, and a supplier, all at the same time. And what was fascinating about that is I found myself going through different conversations that sounded exactly the same. Hey, they need lean, go fix them. So the architects saying, the builders really need to figure out how to be more lean and figure out how to get things done on a timely way. The owners were saying those conversations. General contractors were saying, designers, they're never getting information on time when we need it. We're always waiting. We're having to jockey around in the field to accommodate. Our productivities are lost and wasted, and of course it's on our backs. So, they need some lean. Go figure out how to apply lean to design. We had, trade conversations that sounded very similar, and suppliers going, yeah, I've got the way that I want to do it in manufacturing. You need to go fix them to just kind of wait for us. And everyone else going, they need lean, they need to be more agile, adaptive, and get us what we need when we need it. So it was fascinating. I found myself getting very frustrated as I was also hearing, we can't change what we're doing. That's not how we do things here. Or our first concern is protecting ourselves. I just about dropped off the map from this industry at this junction because it was so maddening to go through these conversations and realize that, this industry really struggling. And I don't have the slide in here that shows the productivity rate of this industry and how it's not keeping pace with every other industry. That slide exists. I chose not to show it, but it exists. And it really does speak to that complexity that I was experiencing. So, I started realizing that with every lean implementation, there was maybe 1 success and 3, 4 backfires across a multitude. And this was not just our industry that we're speaking about today, but this was across all sorts of industries. And so it's like, what's going on there? And so I started trying to understand, and I'd love to have a slide in here that quotes Baba Miliani, but I didn't grab one. But it really made me start to look at what are some other people that are exploring what's going on. There's so much that's not working in the in the leadership and the management and the structures of our organizations. We're not really respecting people, which is really the core tenet of Lean. Continuous improvement seems like it's conveniently spoken, but really we want to have a standard that never changes. And that's what we're going to build our entire business off of, amen, till the end of time. And so it's just there's a whole bunch of things that were going on here that, again, were part of the what Carla was wrestling at the time that I wanted to share by, inner thoughts. Um, since I was still involved in construction, obviously, at this whole time, I was going, okay, what's going on with this lean construction development? And I started dipping into who was tied into this community that built the first kind of organization in 1992-93, which is the International Group for Lean Construction, very academically centric kind of organization exploring this stuff globally, and tying into testing and really furthering some different processes on how do we think about advancing this industry. And as well, in 1997, Glenn Ballard and Greg Howell, who formed the Lean Construction Institute, that still exists very strong today as a body of knowledge that's advancing both construction, but design and construction, to transform how we're building things better. So that was very interesting. And then in 2015, I felt sort of vindicated because there was a Lean Construction Institute Canada that was formed, and we were 10th on the globe at that time to join the global community. And I thought that was just fantastic. Found my people who we should be able to talk about things. And the first conference I went to had some different exploration of, some different principles over time that have popped out in this lean world. There was lean house shared. There was some different first thinking principles around in the middle there around defining value and value stream, flow, pull, and seek to perfect, plan, do, check, adjust. And then finally the, tenets of construction that the Lean Construction Institute was promoting. And so really was I could hear that the industry was trying to connect. And there was some talk of respect for people and continuous improvement. But there were some people talking about, you know what, we'll never take this seriously in construction. We're too busy covering our own backsides to really think about this. And we've got too much, we've got to just get down in there and deliver going on. But that's really, where a lot of the lean conversations were starting to bubble up. And these are more modern references. I'm a bit of a fangirl of both Mark Graben and Katie Anderson, who speak very well towards both of these principles. But I thought there was some good stuff there to share now. Respect for people and continuous improvement were still at the core, regardless of what principles were named or tenets. That still seemed to be at the heart and soul of things. And I was, not hearing that we were ever going to be really dealing with this. So lo and behold, one of the keynote speeches in one of the first Canadian LCI conferences that was held back then was Bill Black. And he addressed something that I was feeling in my soul, and it really spoke to me, and I've never forgotten it. And he said, this industry is broken. And he talked about the rigidity of silos. And being a farm girl, I really dug the connection to understanding things in silos. He said there's one entry point in and one out in every silo in this picture. And they said that this is really how our industry is functioning. It's silos and even nested silos within silos, where contractually we are bound to operate in this kind of manner, where we have chunk of work that comes in, we do a chunk of work, we punt it over the wall to the next, and then we punt it over the wall to next. And if there's something not working, we have to come back, and there's a lot of this negative iteration that's going on. And by the time we get through all that, we're burning a bunch of time till we have got it in the field, and now we're really pressed for time, and we're putting the ultimate pressure on the trade craft that is trying to deliver an absolutely top-notch quality product, oftentimes with not enough information and not enough time to really do the work to string everything together in the format that's needed. So he said, there's really a lot of work needed here, and our traditional silos of how we do this work need to be broken down so that we can get better. That really spoke to me. And so there was, I started understanding even better how we can make connections on the lean methods to really break down some of these silos. And that became what I started becoming more passionate about, on how can we break down silos. And we don't have to operate which some folks told me in early days, Carla, that's the way we have to do work. That's the way our industry works. I mean, we have to cover our butt. That's the way it goes. It's like, no, there's some different ways we can function. And so that really gave me some energy. Alongside all of this, I started reading like a frenzied person, and was trying to connect with anything I could get my hands on. So what I realized in that between 1999 and 2019, there's a ton of different books that one can reference. These are just a small handful of ones that have been are noteworthy in my mind's eye that I wanted to share. And so there was so much going on in this time frame to try to explore, how can we build better, and what does lean really mean, and that everyone was drawing from. Some other noteworthy pieces, second to the industry is broken, was a conference I went to in 2019 where it was so happened to be a Procter & Gamble, I think it was a vice president of capital project delivery that came to do a keynote address at this conference. And I was there with a couple of you around the room. And they were talking about, what lean really was. And so the person did something very specific in this conference to address the fact that lean project delivery and lean is really about delivering more value, less waste, and smooth flow into everything that we're doing. So that was happening alongside I was understanding, and what was being shared was this graphic from Glenn Ballard, which is really about expanding our thinking on Last Planner System, that it's not just a construction tool, and we're not just talking about construction planning. That's who needs to get the scheduling right. It's a broader conversation from ideation of the project in through the project delivery and straight flowing into construction. That's the whole evolution that needs to flow. And so we're really maximizing innovation on the front end at times when the cost of, we can build in innovations easier, design in constructability, design in supply chain availability. All those things are possible at the front end, easier and less costly than making changes later. And so he spoke to that and the rationale behind why we need to expand our view on Last Planner System. And that's where some of the Last Planner System 2.0 and the continued evolution in lean and LPS design planning was kind of getting some stronger roots. The Procter & Gamble leader that stood at the front of the conference, what really struck me was he made everybody stand up, and he had everybody follow him. And he said, "This is what lean really is." And he said, "Follow me." He said, "More value," and everyone had to point to the sky and say more value. It's less waste, and everyone had to touch their toes, and then everyone had to do smooth flow in a Hawaiian kind of way. And I think he made us do this 3 or 4 times. And after feeling silly the first 2, you realize there's 800 people doing this. And I will never forget that as the definition of lean. And forever for me, that will be my definition of lean. When someone asks, instead of the lean manufacturing definition of it's waste elimination, and it's about efficiency, which is really from the eye of the beholder, I started realizing our industry needs that broader connection together to not only make ourselves efficient, but we need to continue to push the boundaries between our silos and break down barriers that help with more value, truly from an owner's perspective in what we're building. And absolutely, it means less waste. So there's a partnership there of what we have to go through, also connected with smoothing out our workflows in multiple directions. So that was terribly impactful for me. At the time, that kicked me into some deeper connections, starting with, what was IPD as that was hitting the stage. And Hal Maycomber, who is a dear friend who I don't get to connect with often enough, and a mentor for me, had some master classes that I started connecting with him and supporting some of their work down in the States. Him and Khaled Davey, who is from South Africa, authored this lovely book called Mastering Lean Leadership, which was issued at one of our conferences. And it's actually connecting the dots between our personal habits and some of the things that we're talking about in lean that can help bring together our work in this industry in a continuous improvement and respect-based way. So that was really fascinating. Thinking in Systems, which is Donella Meadows. Hal actually got me into really understanding the connections of we're all in one big system together, and these different systems and parts all have to improve, but there's limitations to how fast or how far they can improve at any point in time in any one project. And then Lean Project Delivery, and I had the pleasure of working with David Umstadt fairly recently, and is an incredible individual. I know Dan Fauché is another industry leader, and many others, frankly, that this book really connected for me as well, that has a whole wealth of knowledge. So this deeper connection in Lean and IPD kind of brought me into, from some of the projects with Hal into a really impactful project for me with the city of Lloydminster. In January 2020, which is the top right-hand corner picture, there was a bunch of us sitting in a big room space, a huge big room space, at the in the operations building in the city of Lloydminster to talk about their wastewater treatment facility that was going to be IPD. And we had 87.5 million was the maximum allowable budget that the team had to validate within that and figure out what that would look like and aim to get approval from council August 2020. Well, March 2020, everyone knows what happened there. I remember because I was coughing a lot and COVID hit and we all got sent home. And so that team had to go through a whole lot of work to just figure out how to do work remotely, which we weren't really adept at doing that back then, and then still deliver on validating in August of 2020. So at the time, the team came together and said, we can validate at 81.5, and here's the conditions of satisfaction, the program that we're going to deliver, performance requirements-based program. And, we're ready, good to go. So off to the races. Then the supply chain challenges really started hitting and all of the pricing escalation challenges. And hey, we can't get that pre-engineered building for another 4 years. And so let's go and change and find another one. And so the challenges really happened. So this to me, and my role at the time was as a lean coach exclusively. I wasn't the IPD advisor. I was working also with the city of Lloydminster on their internal processes. And my job was to kind of help with the integration of Lean because there was an understanding that that would really, help further the IPD team. So we were working together on the front end. I was working with the team more on the front end on, really being one team. What is best for project? How do we really be adaptive agile? So last planner system was really put to the test in terms of what are the different ways that we could achieve the attention of last planner system. And there's no one standard that anybody had in play that was working. So we had to be able to adapt it to keep up with what was going on, really focusing on digital tools to support the remote work and what I would call a BIMX on steroid plus that was used as not just the front end of design to help with clash detection and a few other things, but really we had to be able to adjust excavation plan 3 weeks before digging. We had to make changes on the fly everywhere. And I say we as the global we, but really at the time that team was pedal to the metal. You wouldn't have known who came from which company. One team, one version of the truth. Really, how are we designing to deal with this logistical supply chain nightmare to construct in a hyper-phased, sequenced manner so that we can pull through this? The one goal that everybody knew existed was that December 2023 treated water needed to be delivered or the mayor would go to jail. And that team actually debobed April 2023, commissioning became successfully obvious in November and definitely hit the December timeframe. And that's with all this stuff going on. This team had a version of target value delivery that was very intensive, and they were agile adaptive doesn't even begin to describe, I think, what was going on there. I didn't see a lot of the back end of this team. I was mostly on the front end, but this team built some strong systems off what we were working on and what we started with TVD, target value delivery, and last planner system, and they sustained it and continued to improve it. And it was incredible. So to me, this really sealed it for me in terms of how Lean really impacts the work that we're doing and how the contract really creates the commercially optimal position or a situation, rather, circumstances to be able to allow Lean to thrive. And so that really taught me a whole lot watching what went on with that group. Somewhere around the time that group was really getting their stride going on in 2021, Dick Beyer, who's another mentor of mine at the time, we started having conversations. And Dick, for those that don't know, he was part of the realignment group and an extended group that includes Dan Fauché and some of the others that I mentioned before. He's also was working on the Canadian Parliament building and was brought into Canada for that purpose. And he tripped into the head of Colliers Project Leaders at the time, and he got into conversations about what was going on with the state of affairs in Canada in capital project delivery, and we're of course very public sector driven in our capital project infrastructure building environment. And so he agreed to sell the company to Colliers Project Leaders and was jumping into this world. So we started conversation, and I always joke with Dick that we talked for 9 months, the time it takes to grow a baby, and I decided that I would jump in. And the reason why is because I had heard already so many conversations of how everybody needs to get fixed, and I'd heard so much from the owner side. I decided I wanted to work with the owner community and really help understand I wanted to work on how to unpack this dynamic. I also had some family work-life balance shifts going on, and as those of you all know, we all have competing needs in our lives. First, we have children, and then we have adults and parents that have health concerns and needs. So I had a bunch of things shifting and changing, and decided to jump in. What's really exciting about Colliers Project Leaders Evolution, and so I ramped down turning results over the course of a couple of years, and I've really jumped in. I'm all in with Colliers Project Leaders at this point in time. What excites me is that the company is much more than just PM services as I had understood it originally. This company is really a wider breadth of helping owners as trusted advisors, and has a whole host of other services alongside. So it's really about supporting especially our public sector clients, but really a little bit of everybody in terms of enabling our built environment. So that's really exciting to me. And even more exciting is sort of hot off the press is the infrastructure advisory practice that Dick and myself and Art Winslow has joined us, who also has been part of the Lean and IPD community and fairly well known. Is we're all part of this advisory practice through what's termed collaborative and lean project delivery execution. So it's really come into being in our conversations with our owners and with our project delivery approach. It's really coming into play. So it's super exciting. There's a recognition that the world has changed. We're more agile, adaptive. That's consistent with the Project Management Institute new PMBOK 7th edition. Our project management world's changed. Everything is shifting into more agile, adaptive. So what that allowed me to be exposed to is this owner side of the conversation, and building on this industry is broken and we're very siloed. How do we be more networked? So the more owners conversations I was in, I started realizing that there was a demand for procurement to shift, and there was an understanding of collaborative delivery and what was needed there. There was more understanding that proactive design and integrated design on the front end instead of design and then punt over the siloed wall to construction. We need to actually design that stuff in sooner, and we have to be able to leverage production efficiencies. That's really becoming important. So there are more owners and mature conversations I was hearing that has really been part of what's fueled Colliers to make this kind of a shift. There's also a proactive focus on it's no longer watchdogging and lagging indicator project management. It is shifting into more leading indicator kind of understanding and connecting with unlocking talent and bringing the best problem solvers to the table. So there's a shift there, and more owners understanding that and going, and I really want that talent at the table working together and problem solving for me, which is exactly what we want to see. And then there's also there's an understanding that rework and waste exists everywhere. It's part of how we do work. Every RFI is littered in waste, and we have 300 to 500 of them per project in our traditional deliveries. We've got ways that we do work that just amplifies waste and the billable hours that owners are paying for. And so the realization of that, I think, is what's bubbling into more and more owners are, demanding, asking, requesting, trying to seek this lean stuff, lean project delivery, and some alternative and collaborative models that are continuing to grow. And so part of what I pulled away and wanted to share as sort of being on this owner's representative side is some different lenses that I have come to understand. So this first lens is around a belief system, that there's a bit of a shift in understanding. And so one of the belief systems that's getting kind of busted up a bit here is that we can break projects into 1,000 pieces and sell them off. We can buy and sell risk and put it all back together efficiently. That is actually a belief system that this industry has functioned off of, and it is drifting into a different direction now. There's an understanding that that is actually not possible in the way that we may have thought previously. Also, we can effectively manage projects and our risks through oversight, rear view management, lagging indicator only. While that can help with a reflective understanding and lessons learned, it is not going to be how we manage, course correct, and agilely adapt our projects. We need to be looking forward, and we need to be proactive. We need to be right on that in a very cohesive way. Also, thankfully, there's an understanding that low cost isn't going to be what wins the day. Lump sum contracts don't give us the time and cost certainty. There's more understanding that it's about the reliability of cost, because the change order conversations have increased dramatically. And so while we think we have certainty on this lump sum here, we're going to eat it in change orders over there. So owners that are coming now to the table asking about collaborative contracts are making those connections, and that we can, again, effectively sell off the risk to others, and that low price is going to win the day. So those are some of the myths that are getting kind of busted and understood. Another lens perspective on traditional project delivery is that when we have an owner's business case and a budget, that we can go through this design process with all the scope in and all of our wishes and needs and wants, that we can punt it over the wall to market, it gets bid, and that it's going to have a price point that we can actually agree with. So the owner's perspective now is understanding that there's the likelihood of coming up with a price that the lowest bid is way over what we can actually afford, and that we have to end up in a value engineering kind of exercise. And no matter how much we try to build that in on the front end, it's not quite working. It's still going to result in ultimately a GC going through a traditional process of selecting trays, and we're ultimately going to have a change order trajectory of some kind that we have to factor into our budget. So now we're over budget, and value engineering is ultimately just meant scope reduction for us. So it was fascinating for me to hear the conversations there, and how, oh, okay, well, yeah, that really sucks from an owner's perspective. If I'm an owner, that would really frustrate me. And meanwhile, some owners are used to hearing, well, that's how the industry works. So that's how you have to play it. So you have to hire some other consultants to help you play that better. So that started, me thinking and really appreciating what we were trying to build in Colliers. Another non-value added activity kind of lens, I spoke about RFIs. And so this is from Winslow Group work early on. If this contractor has a question out in the field, and this is a hospital example from the US, and the surgeon has the information, to really answer and address that question. How do we get that information into those that are doing the work today? Well, we put it through our contractual, daisy chain to get the question answered, and it feeds back down through the contractual daisy chain. That's our RFI process to understand what's going on and if there's an actual change or not, or it's just a question. We try to answer the question, but the number of times, there's no data on this yet, but I'd love to see it if there is, the number of times that question is actually answered, there's some speculation that it's about 1/3 of the time. And so we repeat this 3 times, or there's multiple conversations to try to figure it out, or someone gets smart and calls the source or whatever. It's a daisy chain of different really wasteful processes at the end of the day. Another lens, when we just take a look at how many drawings are insufficient, where we have to have back and forth, or we have to do something different, it's 92%. Some data that comes from Howard Ashcraft and some of the Hanson Bridget organization and IPD. And 37% of everything comes onto a project site is wasted. This is about 5 years old data at this point. So I'm not sure where it is now. Hopefully it's better with some of our, lead and sustainability work. But when you add all that up, there's a ton of opportunity that Lean is very well suited for. So my last sort of owner lens story here is connected to the Empire State Building. And I was trying to figure out what story can I tell that really also hit me in my journey here talking with owners. And I decided to pick up this one because I was at PMI Manitoba and doing a workshop and speaking at their conference. And there's a couple of owners that came up to me afterwards when I shared this. They said, holy smokes, if only we could operate that way again. And so the story, some of you and many of you know, this is not a foreign story. It's been told many times. Is the Empire State Building kind of um, secret or famous thing here is that there was a fixed total budget of 50 million. So in today's dollars, that would be different. But it was announced in August 29th of 1929 that there was an intention to have a 20-month process of design to construct from first sketch to ribbon cutting. And so it was declared up front, and I'll spare you all the names involved and all that kind of stuff. But ultimately, there was a group that was engaged. Subcontractors were brought in right away with builders and designers right at the start. They were developing specs together. They tested materials and strategies alongside design, did whatever it took to figure out how to articulate and capture the design that was intended. And it started with, a pencil was the design concept, literally, and went into a series of what we now know as target value delivery to really engage in what's the construction practice that can best deliver our intention for design to deliver the value that the owner is talking about here. So it was a very simultaneous kind of process to hit a cost. That was the intention, to hit the cost at the timing that was going on. So excavation for this thing started in January of 1930, which if you just take a look at that timeline, that's pretty darn quick for some of the early designs. So obviously there was a simultaneity to the phasing and the design and construction work happening. And building construction started in March of 1930. So it was pretty hopping kind of pace here. At peak construction, as they were going through the 102 stories, the pace was 1 story per day. Okay. Now, some of you may or may not know the punchline, but the final ribbon cutting was May 1931. 20 months after, just like it was intended, and the final cost came in under budget. And so there's people that look at that story now and go, how the heck did that happen? And so the owners that came up to approach me said, I think it's got to have something to do with what the contract is, and it's got to have something to do with how we do work. And the answer is it's probably all of those things. But our industry, with the increasing complexities and the increasing focus on contracts, have really doubled down on this siloed kind of formation. Gone are the days where that is happening. Now, I'm not going to advocate for everything that was going on there. There was lots of learnings on safety and how, construction work occurred to make sure things are happening in a safe manner. But there's something really important to understand from this story. And so as we think about what's going on in our industry, there's really a combination of things happening. On one hand, the commercial agreements that we operate within is absolutely a part of the story. And some people say we're contract obsessed in Canada. And I do, with some of the other touch points I've had with other leading coaches on the globe, I would tend to agree. But it is really hard to function without an understanding of what the contract is telling us to do. But it is not okay, I think, to lead a project off the contract. And so there are some great contracts that are more traditional transactional that I think have some very collaborative players that choose to take that contract, put it over here behind glass, and then figure out how to get work done. I also think there's some contracts that are very collaborative by nature, namely IPD, that can have some bad behaviors in it and it doesn't function as well as it could. And so the commercial is a part of it, but the other two aspects of the system are critical as well. So we have conversations evolving right now on PDB, Progressive Design Build, IPD, and Alliance, which is the profit sharing, and in the case of Alliance, profit and overhead sharing, or risk reward, pardon me. And so we have a lot of those things happening across, this transition from transactional to relational in the spectrum of delivery models. But really that can't operate in a silo or isolation from what we need to do to get the work done efficiently and effectively. And a lot of things that are in our Lean suite, as I've already shared in my understanding in the journey, was that, what we're doing in actual project delivery and the management of it is critical. It is about last planner system or higher evolved agile adaptive systems and tools such as Agile and Scrum and Sprint boards and all those kinds of good things that we need in design. It's also tact planning, which is the manufacturing adaptation of tact, which means everything's coming off the line at a clip at a certain pace, and we pace the rest of the operation to that pace. tact planning is trying to do that in a spatial kind of manner. And so, major kudos to a Jason Schroeder, who I'm also a fangirl of, and Spencer Easton, and those that are furthering tact planning. It's really kind of created another dimension to an operating system that's evolving. Target value delivery over time is shifted from target cost, like that understanding I described with Procter and Gamble, to target value design has to be integrated to no, it's not just integrated design and pull some thoughts in and design assist. It is, we really need to build in construction practices. We need prefab, we need precast, we need to leverage every every different kind of innovative way of building that we've got, because those are the kinds of ways that are going to allow us to build better and deliver more value ultimately for the total build, as well as, of course, the human engagement practices that Lean is famous for. So the culture of it all and the players that are coming in from the different corporations trying to build one project together, all this comes together in the culture, the aggregate of people and behaviors and working norms and, all the team structures inside every project. There's a myriad of different combinations that are happening to deliver design to construct for one building. So is it project lean? Is it corporate lean? I think a lot of it is very much both. And so again, those key operating systems, not to kind of get too deep into this, the target value delivery is sort of a staple lean operating system. I learned that very, very well from Hal Maycomber and what's really involved there and how to connect that to path of construction and how to think about, releasing early release of work and operating in constraints. All of that's connected intimately with last planner system and starting early. It's about planning versus scheduling. It's not critical path management, because depending on the variation that hits you in your project, the critical path can change. And so how can we plan better, and how can we be more agile, adaptive in our planning? What are the different mechanisms for doing that? How do we engage everybody, all stakeholders, which is where last planner system was designed from a trade craft perspective. So those are really still the two core operating systems, and we have a lot of work to do to further those along. Back to my owner's rep kind of thinking, the conversation inside Project Colliers Leaders is about understanding that we have a spectrum of project delivery methods. We have a range of maturity within our owner teams and understanding what's going on in these different models. There is a range and spectrum as well of maturity and understanding in different regions and with different players. And so we've got lots of different dynamics and contributing factors to what goes into deciding these project delivery models. And so now our team is on the front end working through those conversations of saying, how do you decide? It's not just as simple as risk in some of our traditional thinking, or Carla calls it the PTSD of, I had this experience on this project way back when, and so that doesn't work. Well, there's lots of PTSDs on every single one of these models. And so, how can we get more sophisticated in our determination of what is really best suited and best fit for the one building and bringing players together? Does it look different for a Chick-fil-A that has to get pumped out with a very specific floor plate every time? My son's obsessed with Chick-fil-A. So anyway, Chick-fil-A, or is it a more complex building that requires a lot of nested, integrated, design to construction and high sustainability kind of goals? There's different models for different kind of needs on projects, and different owner maturity levels and different supply chain maturity levels. So we're trying to figure this equation out right now, and this is where my headspace is at. One thing is for sure, we are moving in this direction from transactional to relational. There are many owners that are frustrated with not getting responses on RFPs that are out in the field because they're being written in this transactional space. And so there's more of a transition into this more collaborative and alternative models that are going on. And so I often get asked, in this spectrum, well, any model can be collaborative, Carla. So what is really collaborative contracting? So, Dick Beyer and our whole team has been really trying to understand this. And this is just a reference from McKinsey. And regardless of how you feel about the research that's been done here, what seems to be consistent across a few other players is that there's these traits that are surfacing around what's truly called collaborative contracting. And so now we're trying to understand and be able to talk about this more consistently, whereby we can say, these are the 4 traits of collaborative contracting. So there's a predefined planning period. So PDB has a phase 1 to the phase 1 and phase 2, where we're working together to really build the owner's statements of requirement, the statement of requirements of work, or what have you. And we're really unpacking how do we design to that budget. But it's a pre-planning period, whether it's called validation, as in progressive design, build, and IPD, or if it's in alliance, it's called the development phase sort of agreement period. So there's a predefined period where the major players are coming together. There's some kind of understanding, as there's some single contract or an agreement at that point. In IPD, it's a team coming together that's signing one relational contract. There's some no fault clauses that are part of that world in collaborative contracting. We're waiving liabilities, so we can't sue each other in IPD. There's still the proper protections on willful and negligent and default and all those kinds of things, but it's still we're waiving the stuff that happens on traditional projects so that we can focus on the collaboration really. And then there's a joint project management structure. So these are the key traits of collaborative contracting. And what we're trying to unpack now for owners is trying to understand, again, that spectrum of options and what's right to do, pulling from these kinds of new paradigm shifts that are going on and kind of moving forward. So what's fascinating, and I wanted to share some conversations that are going on. So there's a pattern of owner concerns for using, I'm just going to pick on IPD as a specific model. Some of the conversation points that are coming up are, the investment up front seems very excessive, too expensive. We're pulling a lot of people into a big room. That doesn't seem to make sense. But it takes a little bit to understand that we're measuring 3 times to cut once. And we're really building these kinds of constructability practices in, as opposed to doing it later when it's more expensive for the owner. So I think we're trying to really get at an improved understanding there, but that's definitely one of the lead concerns that we're hearing. Teams are not really listening to the owner and the project needs. So we really need to just build it all into these traditional transactional contracts, and so that we have a checklist of things that, yes, we've been heard. And so we're trying to evolve that now, that we can have the essence of what occurred in the Empire State Building, but we really need to be able to have these more mature conversations, and we need to be able to leverage these kind of models to do so. Or it's more about profit protection than profit at risk. This is one that's really come about in the last few years, as it's, in IPD, we're building our own budget and then we're operating against that budget. If we come in under budget, we have more profit. If we come in over budget, we chew into our profit. And so now some of the concerns are, well, the team is just going to profit protect. They're not really going to be transparent with their budget. So our team is really wanting to work with a little bit of everybody to counter these things, because we're all really believing in this relational spectrum and lean work that's going on. And so there's a lot of work going on there to really, profit's not a 4-letter word. It really isn't. Everybody needs to make a profit, but it's about fairness and equitable and creating the right kind of playing field for everybody to fully contribute and have their costs covered and make a decent buck. And so this PDB and IPD and alliance conversation, it's still a bit of a muddle. And in the owner side, we're trying to unpack that. So I just wanted to share that, as working on the collaborative and lean project delivery team, this is where our conversation is often lying, and where we're trying to really be helpful. Over the last few years, and kind of as I'm wrapping up here, I think what's been awesome is that the Integrated Project Delivery Alliance is an example of an organization that has really evolved into becoming a more objective, not-for-profit that multiple parties can join and participate in understanding some practices that kind of swing us into this realm. So there's some really good stuff going on there, and it's not, brand new conversation anymore. It's hitting more mainstream. So that's super exciting, as the stuff that Carla's gotten really passionate about is fixing this broken industry. And I think this model really does accomplish a lot of that, but it's not for everybody. And so, agnostic to contract type, there's still the essence of lean project delivery and what we can do to really adopt this lean practice of how do we really try to design to a target? How do we build in constructability? How do we do some of this stuff? We can do that in other models. Yes, we have the best possible environment or climate with IPD to be able to do the most lean, but there are projects everywhere that are of different models that are doing this kind of stuff. So it's really agnostic to contract type. Now, the Lean Construction Institute Canada that I spoke about earlier in 2015 has evolved. It's not underneath and reporting to Canadian construction industry anymore. It has taken a while to come around as a not-for-profit that is independent, and it's really just getting legs back under itself here. And I am a part of that group, as are a few others in the room. And we're really trying to advance this. And there's more conversation needed because we haven't included the designers properly in the conversation to any of our satisfaction, or the owners. We're really needing to be more than just lean construction. It is a broader conversation of how do we build better and make this flow happen. More value, less waste, and smooth flow. That's really what lean is. And so some people ask me, well, Carla, do I really invest in lean, to lean or not to lean kind of question. And where I'm coming out after being with Colliers Project Leaders for 3 years now and having more owners kind of conversation, I think the owner's perspective continues to evolve in this direction and mature. There's more of there's more value, less waste, and smoother flow that we're getting when we have this stuff in play on lean. But some of what I get asked is, is it really lean, or is it Lean Six Sigma? Is it this belt or that belt? Is it agile or Scrum or TACT? Where do we invest our time in training? Like Carla, it's so complex, and that's fair enough. There's some people that say, I don't want to use the word lean, so it's the sneaky lean, as it's been called by our Calgary community of practice. Is it just continuous improvement? Is it innovation? Is it about people first? And I really, really think about this hard, because the term lean, the English connotation gets in the way. It means weight loss. And, frankly, I like food and whatever. I don't think that's the right word for us and for what we're doing. I think it's misrepresenting. And I think the Western world has really messed that up as we've gotten hyper-focused on lean, meaning cutting reduction, and the lean manufacturing version that we've gotten locked in on. And we haven't realized this is what's evolving. And so I got given a t-shirt by Bob Robinson, and it had this on it. And I worked with Westcore Construction for quite a long time. And they got used to me saying, I don't give a what this thing is called. So let's figure out how to do the right thing. It's a little bit of common sense, although we have to look at a broader view and not just a narrow view of what works for me and what makes sense to me. It's a sense for the industry. So there is an evolution that has to continue to happen in our maturity and understanding that, this lean cultural stuff does ground itself in continuous improvement and respect for people, really, really. But there's a lot of stuff that's really commonsensical. And if we talk to each other and engage our organizations and engage with the supply chain and, breaking down silos and barriers, we can really get to an improved place of functioning. So I think all companies should be thinking like this. And I actually really enjoy going back to the Lean Enterprise Institute roots and going, okay, how do companies need to think? And it's really about, each company has their own objective and goals and aspirations of what problem are we trying to solve for our clients. That's our client-facing thinking, just like Toyota did to jump into the automobile market. And then based on that, what's the processes that we need and the capability of our people to get the work done and systemically approach it, and what are the capabilities, and then what's our base foundational thinking? Our culture matters, culture counts, it matters, language matters. All of that really is an important part of the picture. And so I think all companies need to be really breaking this down. We're agile, adaptive. There's no fix it and forget it one standard anymore. That doesn't exist. Gone are those days. And so I think lean does have that space and place. Again, whatever you call it, I actually don't care. But I do think that we need all the guts of all of that stuff that has evolved over time. And we need to bring our talented, folks to the table and be open and receptive to each other on continuing to explore. So that's really my address here for this group is I'm hoping that and excited and continue to be passionate about building better. I think lean is at the core of that, and I think it always will be, regardless of what we name it. And when someone asks me, Carla, what gives you energy and passion for this industry, this is what it is. And I do see incredible nuggets of things going on. I came from a big room yesterday that had just some awesome conversation, and I'm continued to be encouraged with the new energy and blood that comes into our industry and how we're utilizing different tools and grounding that with the experience of those that know what really works and pulling all that together. We got a lot of talent. We got to figure out how to use it better. So there's my commentary and address to the Edmonton. What did you call yourself, Avel? YEG?
Lean-YEG, yeah.
Okay, not to be confused with keg. That's what I heard the first time, but maybe you guys are very social. I thought maybe you drink a lot of beer. It's all good.
Lean cake. We don't give a rat's bum what it's called. So
There you go. All right. So there you go. Over to you. And sorry, I forgot to actually stop for questions. I got so caught up in my own story. So open to any questions and however you wanted to move forward.
no worries. Thank you again, Carla, for sharing today. One of my key takeaways was that, that's like, as you said, the Toyota Way was very focused on the approach to building people's capability and in parallel process improvement, not just, reducing waste. It's like almost, you're building the people's capability through the process of process improvement. And you had a lot of stuff on there, and I just want to make sure that everyone knows that before we get to that questions and answer period, we encourage you to stay connected to our community, continue these conversations that have been sparked today, and explore the opportunities for collaboration. Join our LinkedIn page and visit our YouTube channel. I put the links in the chat. You can go in there and see this video and other videos in the past, and keep on touch with new presentations and new events that we're going to be happening here in the Lean community of practice here in Edmonton. Okay, so it's time to transition to the Q&A session. Please feel free to post your question in the chat or utilize the raise hand feature if you prefer to ask your question verbally. And remember to unmute yourself before speaking. We're very eager to hear your questions and engage in a really cool conversation. And you can start posting questions or raising your hand as I talk here. Who wants to go first? What brave soul wants to run the gambit? All right.
I'll go.
Go for it.
Sorry.
Great job, Carla. That was awesome. And I've heard a lot of your stories before, but it's kind of cool to actually see it all put into one presentation. Is great job as always. I've got a couple questions. I'll start with one though. You showed a lot of cool resources and books and everything. What are you reading right now, or what's on your, some of us, lean geeks, we have on our bedside table books, but they're, lean books where, we're very interesting folks, which I'm sure you've got kind of the similar. What do you got going on right now?
Yeah, so I'm actually rereading this right now, How Big Things Get Done, which is really getting into again, how are we breaking down some of the silos that hold us up is the way I'd say it, and it really articulates that only a very small percentage of projects are really getting done from an owner's perspective on time and on budget, and so there's some really interesting nuggets there I'm reconnecting with. I also love these two books, and I'm pulling together some materials for my team right now as Last Planner System is evolved and evolving, and it's actually not just this one. There's a construction scrum, like how do we think about agile, adaptive on the design side, along with tact planning, which is on my bedside table at the moment, so it's over there. I'll go run and get it. And then the Lean Builder, which is also referencing tact planning. So these are a couple of for Joe and Ken, a couple of superintendents that are really fantastic at really grounding what this looks like in the field. So those are just a couple that are I'm doing a lot of rereading right now and reconnecting with some of the high points as our team is now 10 across the country, and we've got so many PDB and IPD projects. It's kind of exploding in multiple corners of Canada. So we're trying to figure out how to expand very quickly and pull from the best of all this stuff.
For the builders that are in the room, that Lean Builder book is phenomenal. It's the one that I point all of our superintendents to when I get asked about where can I go to learn more. That book is fantastic. I have one more. So well done.
Yeah, for sure. I don't want to distract from that. Just one more I just thought of. I brought it out because of some interesting conversations this last week in some of our big rooms in IPD. And it's Radical Candor by Kim Scott. I don't know if anybody's been exposed to that book, but our language really matters, and the choices of words and how we, confront situations, and can we do it in a nice way and not just, a way that builds negatively affects our relationships. So I'm just, it's an interesting kind of book as well.
Awesome. Tim. Great. Next up, we have Tim. Tim, did you like to ask your question?
Yeah, great. Thanks, Abel. Thanks, Carla. Great talk. at IPDA in the session, you mentioned about how your thinking is evolving on how to better implement last planner system and lean in the design phase. And I'm wondering if you can share where your thinking's evolving on that.
Sure. Okay. So I think that as last planner system was originally really, again, construction focused, it was designed off of, we have a milestone of starting piles here at this date. And so working backwards from that, what are the constraints that are getting in the way of that work? I think the evolution that's happening now is actually going through a planning exercise to connect the dots more thoroughly into our permitting, the work packaging, the design work that goes on and that feeds things, and kind of breaking down working backwards, not as a constraint to construction, but as part of the extended family of players that are designing to construct. So I think the evolution is that we actually have to start with the milestones at a very high level for the project. If we could zoom up at a 30,000 foot view, that's what was intended. But we don't really talk about it like that. Instead, we have design that's going on for whatever length of time, and then all of a sudden we've got a plan to construct. And so I think the evolved understanding is that we can really break down in a production working backwards fashion, what do the design activities look like, but then we can't just force a start. We actually have to think about, in a respectful way, the last planners for design are actually the team leads that are doing the design work. And so is it possible, no different than we ask our trades in last planner system, is it possible to meet that reliably? What can you do to get the work done? And so we actually have to do a whole lot more to advance that in design. Because if you think about it, it's not a tried and true practice every time. Design is unfolding nested series of decisions. And so we actually have to be able to draw from, Felipe's kind of Scrum practice, not just Felipe, but that whole agile Scrum, which is about advancing the plan. So it's a little different in design. So that's where some of the evolution is coming in, that last planner system actually has to clip to some of the other tools in that regard to help the conversation in design, where we don't have a clear, operation and series of events. Yes, we can still create a production-like flow, but to really connect and have that commitment made, we have to do some different things. So that's where agile comes in. And then again, TAC planning has some different things to layer over top of that. Is that helpful?
Yeah, super interesting. Thank you.
Yeah, there's lots of exploration going here in multiple corners. So there's maybe individuals even in the room that have some exposure there. I also wanted to call out Tim. You just kind of, since you're put your hand up, Tim is leading the community of practice out in Vancouver and Vancouver Island, along with a few others. Yeah, hi, says Tim. And so we really do have a broader community outside of Edmonton, although Edmonton is awesome. There are multiple awesome communities everywhere that are starting to really pick up the conversation and continue it along. Thanks, Tim.
Yeah, we're all over the place. You're dropping a whole bunch. Just so you know, everyone, just make sure you check the chat. As Carla's been name dropping a whole bunch of stuff. I've been trying to do the pasting and putting it in there, so you when she's naming like Felipe and Bob Emiliani, you can find it real quick as well too.
Thank you for saving me and helping me out that way.
No worries. That's what we do. And again, as well too, if you wanted to know all the different lean communities that we have here, check out the Lean Design and Construction page. Those are all the different lean communities of practice. So you can sit there and find someone in your backyard. You'd be surprised. We're out there. We're like cockroaches. We're everywhere.
Can we pick a more attractive comparison? Just a thought.
Yeah, the good kind, right? The ones that are in the Empire State Building.
Oh, there we go. Okay.
Are there any more questions that anyone has for Carla?
I have one other one if there's no one else I don't want to take up all the time with questions, but from me. But if there's no one else, I've got a question from the owner's perspective, Carla, about team selection. When we start to move into these more collaborative projects, it's almost, we've talked about this, the chicken and the egg kind of a thing, about getting into these collaborative type of projects and not having the experience, but then as the project team selection happens, ultimately there's a level of experience that's required. From the owner's perspective, what is that starting to look like now? Because I think it was, over the last number of years, it's been tough for people or companies, whether that's design or construction, to break into that space because, I can't get experience if I don't have to do the work, but if I don't get the work, I don't have the experience. So can you maybe talk about that a little bit from the owner's side of things?
Sure. I think, again, I think there's different level of maturity within the owner's space and different conversations going on at different times. So I'll preface what I'm saying with that. But I think there's, first of all, there's an understanding that if you're going to do these kind of more collaborative models that you're talking about, that it's more of a quality-based selection than about price. And so that is one thing that's different. But to speak directly to what you asked, I think there's we're trying to create an improved understanding that it's not just about someone who's done IPD, it's about collaborative delivery and a receptiveness to explore maximizing value and minimizing waste. So it's not about a pattern of IPD anymore. It's about, really, we're trying to pull a team of people together for fairness and equitable. It's not profit protection, it's profit at risk. And so that's the conversation. Who are the most collaborative players to come to the table and work with the owner, not the owner's over there and we'll do this IPD thing for you. And I'm not saying that that's necessarily been what's going on, but some of those fears and concerns that I referenced, it's there, whether it's perceived or it's real. That's part of what we're trying to build an understanding on. So I think, Brian, what you're referencing is that depending on the owner, depending on if they had some PTSD or not, or what they've heard, there's a varying level of mature conversation, hopefully moving in the right direction, that says it's not just about the experience, check the box, I've had X number. It is, here's what I'm doing inside my company. Here's how I can tell you I will be collaborative. And I'm really excited to work on your project and solve your problems. So I'm hearing more in being part of many of those procurement developments and interviews, hearing more of oh yeah, that's what I want to work with. That's the player I want to work with. And so, in these collaborative models, there's more focus on interview as well. So I think that's starting to come around. So I would suggest to those that don't have experience and want to jump into these types of collaborative models is really, really explore what's here on Lean and these, again, the commercial agreement is just creating the best possible environment. So really explore, look into the Lean Construction blog, read everything you can get your hands on there, reach out, join your community practice, and kind of jump into the conversation because that opportunity is going to be there for you and you can position yourself that way. There's also lots of partnerships that are forming in different space, both in design and construction and trade, like multiple sides of the corners here of who joins to build a building. And so lots of partnerships that are being explored as well to consider.
Awesome. Thanks.
Awesome. Karen, you had your hand up for our last question before we end the session.
Yeah, thanks. Carla, you had a slide where you were showing sort of the client hesitancies to getting into an IPD kind of project. And I don't think you mentioned in your list of items is the fact that the client may need to provide a higher level of resources from their end and commitment, and especially upfront, and especially at that pre-planning stage that you mentioned. I was just wondering if you had any more thoughts about that, especially seeing as you're working on the client side, because I find with projects that when we do try and not necessarily IPD, but just lean the project and we're like, it'd really help us if you could give us your furniture and equipment list a lot earlier than you usually give it to us. Then, clients can be, deer caught in the headlights, and they can't break out of their patterns of when they need to deliver their resources of personnel to the project. And it's, I find, so I am on the design side. I'm an architect, and, I find that a lot of design is not even about designing or drawing or doing specifications, but clearing the roadblocks. And it's like, if someone says, how long will this take you how long will you take to do this? It's like, I don't know, are you going to clear all the roadblocks or are you not going to clear the roadblocks? Because it will make a huge difference of time as to, whether you give us the information up front or whether we have to tease it out of you line by line. So.
Yeah, great. So, Karen, thank you. This is a great question, a great point you're bringing up. And it really is all about clearing roadblocks, to create flow. So that's awesome. And I think this is why what makes me excited for what's going on at Colliers is we're really trying to support the owner on the front end. And public sector, there's not, resources growing on trees to help with capital project delivery, right? So that's what Colliers is trying to do, is help in those kinds of situations. So whether it be FF&E kind of mandate or other things. So I think that's part of what is happening inside of Colliers. But to address your question, in these collaborative models, what it's causing is a bit of a pressure point on owners. Have to be prepared to join in these collaborative models with the right players to jump into the conversation so that the team can get an understanding of what's needed on the operability of whatever it is we're building, for whatever program that needs to exist after it's built, et cetera, et cetera. And so I think we're trying to get a readiness happening that is sometimes slow to come, and so that we can create, a really productive collaborative model. So I think that is our challenge, which you just called out. And I think what part of the reason why we want the owners to join the Lean community conversation is to understand in Lean, we want to begin with the end in mind. Toyota was, what does it mean to jump into, be the preferred vehicle for the consumer. So we have to actually begin with the end in mind from an owner standpoint. So we're trying to get our owners to understand that and come into the Lean conversation so they can understand this full spectrum and therefore start building a readiness into their own programs, be it from an asset management standpoint on through, as some owners are into digital twinning and working down that path already. And so it's like, hey, I already know what I need out of BIM and I already know how I want to interact with the team. Some are absolutely not there, and some haven't even really detailed out their program. So you are teasing it out line by line. I'm not helping your question. I'm basically saying, I get what you're saying. And this is where our community needs to really help the conversation more. And we all have a different role to play to sort of help close this infrastructure deficit. And what you just described is exactly where we need to be working.
Yeah, exactly. Because I think it's just not the norm, and it's really hard to get their head wrapped around it. And even often people think of, let's say in an IPD project, that the validation is the start point. But my experience is if the owner comes to the table with a lot of pre-work even before the validation, it makes the validation go faster, smoother, and less sort of back and forth needs to happen if the owner even understands, like you say, what is their program and what do they really need, which has nothing to do with drawing it on a piece of paper with a shape or form, but just even, what is their intent in these spaces, and what is their typical expectation? Like if they've already got buildings that are representative, what do they like or dislike about those spaces? Is it a classroom? What do you want in your classroom based on your pluses and minuses from previous classrooms or something like that? So again, I get it that there's not an answer to the question, but it's just sort of good to tease out that is an important factor, is having the owner ready at the get-go and not lagging behind inadvertently.
Absolutely. And we also need to, in the respect and continuous improvement kind of mindset here on Lean, we need to realize that our owners don't always have the right resources at hand for what they need to do. And so, how can we help support them as well? And so it's kind of leaning over the wall sometimes, or leaning over the aisle to help. And so we have a lot of those kinds of things that are going on. And so some of the strongest designers in the Lean space are figuring out how to programmatically attack that, as we're also figuring out how to help owners structure things, and we're figuring out how to run IPD projects better. We're not expecting any longer that an owner can put their day job aside and necessarily have 5 people sit in a big room, every week. It's not reasonable or realistic. So how can we structure the IPD work itself so that we can still have the owner part of the big room? And so there's lots of things moving there. But thanks very much for your question.
Yeah, great talk. Thank you.
Yeah, great question. Yeah, and owners, they're very orange, right? It's hard to kind of pin them down in a big room for a whole day. They're just like or they
Well,
they
yes and
peter off
no.
over the course of the project?
Yes and no. I mean, some of you, I see a few names around the table here of are in big rooms where there are owners committed and they're there for the whole day. So we are getting that commitment when there is that understanding, but it is also about setting it up for success on the front end. So
Nice. All right. Thank you, everyone, for joining today's presentation. Again, thank you, Carla, for coming and sharing your tickle trunk of ideas and thoughts. And again, reminder to everyone, please join our LinkedIn page, see when our next one coming up, which is the third week of every Friday, or the third Friday of every month. And our next one will be February 21st. And we don't know what it's going to be, but if you check our LinkedIn page, you'll find out when we do. On that note, have a great and fantastic weekend, everyone. Stay warm. And signing off from Lean-YEG. Bye, everybody.